The CEO fired her in front of everyone. But the next day, she returned with his son and shocked him. 5 years ago, he walked away from her, even after she told him she was pregnant. Now he's the CEO, and she just walked back into his company, under a different name. He recognized her the second she stepped in, but said nothing. Then, in front of everyone, he fired her. The next day she returned, holding the hand of a little boy who looked exactly like him. And that's when the entire office stopped breathing, including him. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now let's get back to the story. The office went silent the second her ID badge hit the floor. Everyone turned. Clara Evans stood there, face pale, lips trembling, but not out of fear. Her hands were steady as she unhooked her lanyard slowly, with a strange dignity. One by one the whispers stopped. All that was left was the sound of his voice, sharp, final, and cold. "You're done here," Elliot Hayes said, loud enough for the entire floor to hear. A gasp rippled through the room. No one got fired like this, not in public, not in that voice. But Elliot's eyes didn't flinch, not when Clara looked up at him. Not even when she said nothing, just gave a soft, bitter smile and turned to leave. Her heels echoed as she walked down the corridor, past the floor-to-ceiling windows, past the shocked intern she'd just trained, past the secretary who couldn't even meet her eyes. And Elliot stood there, still as stone. His fists clenched, jaw tight. He didn't blink, not once. 30 minutes earlier, she had been laughing in the break room with another temp. She'd only been here for 2 weeks, but people already liked her. She was smart, helpful, knew the office systems better than half the permanent staff. Elliot had noticed that. He'd noticed everything. The new last name, Clara Monroe, the tied-up hair, the longer silence before answering questions, the necklace she always tucked under her blouse, and of course those eyes. God, those eyes. But the moment she stepped into the boardroom that morning, file folders in hand, calm and composed like a storm held back by skin, something inside him cracked. He saw her. The one he'd tried so hard to forget, the one he never really could, and yet he said nothing. He stared past her like she was air, pretended he didn't recognize the shape of her smile, the curve of her voice. He nodded to her like a stranger, as if 5 years hadn't passed since the last time he held her in his arms and made a promise he didn't keep. She didn't react either, not when he called her Ms. Monroe, not when he avoided eye contact, not even when he dismissed her suggestion mid-meeting like it was irrelevant. But it was all an act. Both of them were acting. Everyone else in that boardroom might have seen a temporary hire being corrected by the CEO, but Clara knew the truth. Elliot Hayes knew exactly who she was, and he was pretending she didn't exist. The firing had come out of nowhere. She had been correcting a data misalignment. Quiet professional, nothing emotional, nothing personal. She'd done it 100 times before, but that time her voice reached him, touched a nerve buried so deep even Elliot didn't know it was still bleeding. He stood, walked toward her, and with the whole floor watching, said 5 words he would regret every second afterward. "You're no longer needed here." Clara didn't say anything on the way down the elevator. She held her coat tightly over her chest, as if it could shield her from the eyes she could still feel behind her. When the doors opened, she took one shaky breath and stepped out into the lobby. The receptionist blinked at her. "Ms. Monroe, did something happen?" Clara gave a short smile. "Everything's fine," but her voice broke on the last word. She reached the glass exit doors. The city air hit her like a slap, hot and loud. Summer in New York had a way of making everything more intense. Clara crossed the street, reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. There was one missed call from her neighbor, and one message. "Noah wouldn't nap. He keeps asking if you're bringing the hero man home." said he drew another picture for him. Her hands shook. She blinked hard and looked up toward the glass tower she just walked out of. Her reflection stared back. She didn't recognize herself. 5 years ago, she was a wide-eyed intern who believed in happy endings, and he was the rising star with steel blue eyes and a voice that could make or break someone's future. He had taken her out for coffee once, then again it was quiet. Secret, their world inside a bubble. He wasn't married. He wasn't playing her. He just wasn't ready. When she found out she was pregnant, she told him, straight to his face, in the park where they used to meet on Thursdays. He held her hand the whole time, and then, 2 days later, he broke up with her. "You deserve a life that's not built around hiding," he'd said. "I'll only end up hurting you." She asked him if that was his way of saying he didn't love her. He didn't answer, and she never saw him again. Until 2 weeks ago, when she walked back into that same building under a different name. She hadn't returned for revenge. She needed the income, needed to feel like herself again. Just 3 months of contract work, then back to freelancing and caring for Noah. But Elliot made sure it ended even sooner than that. And yet, she didn't cry. Not until she reached home. Not until Noah ran to her, barefoot in his little dinosaur pajamas, and handed her the drawing. "Is he real, Mama?" he asked. "The hero man? The one in my dream?" She knelt beside him. Her voice was quiet. "Yes, baby. He's real." "Will he ever come visit me?" She looked at the picture. A tall man, drawn with strong arms, standing between a boy and a dark shadow. But the face was missing. Just a blank oval, Clara swallowed, and made a decision. The next morning, at exactly 9 a.m., she returned to the office building. The security guard blinked. You're back?" Clara smiled softly. She wore the same simple dress, the same scarf around her neck, but this time she held a small hand in hers. "Noah," she said gently, "say good morning." The little boy looked up at the guard and waved. "Good morning." And that's when they walked through the glass doors together, mother and son, right into the heart of the same office where she had been fired 24 hours before. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. The bobshit. Conversations stopped. Phones were mid-ring. Coffee was halfway to lips. Everyone turned. And there he was, Elliot Hayes, standing by the glass wall near reception. He turned at the sound of voices. He saw her. And then he saw him, the child. The gray eyes, the same eyes as his. And in that one moment, Elliot Hayes forgot how to breathe. Elliot didn't move. Couldn't. The entire floor seemed to tilt. His grip loosened on the folder in his hand, and papers slipped to the floor. But he didn't notice. All he saw was the boy, dark hair, soft cheeks, and those unmistakable gray-blue eyes, his eyes. Noah looked up, clutching Clara's hand. His small face lit up with curiosity, not fear. "Mama," he whispered, tugging her wrist, "is that him?" Clara didn't answer, not yet. They walked forward slowly, like gravity had changed, and every step took more effort than the last. The room was dead silent. Even keyboards had stopped clicking. Interns stood frozen, mugs in midair, pretending not to stare. But everyone was watching. Clara kept her chin high. She wasn't here for revenge, but she wasn't going to be erased either. When they reached the middle of the room, Clara paused, then gently knelt beside her son. "Go sit there by the couch, baby. Draw me something while I talk, okay?" Noah nodded, cheerful. "Okay." He pulled out his little sketchbook and crayons from Clara's bag like it was the most normal thing in the world. Clara stood up. Elliot's eyes locked with hers. She stepped closer, just enough that he could see the outline of the necklace beneath her shirt. The same one he'd given her years ago, cheap but meaningful. She still wore it. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice low, rough. Her reply was calm. "To return the documents you so urgently needed." She held up a folder, the same one he had accused her of misfiling yesterday. the same one that, it turned out, he had misplaced. She placed it carefully on the nearest desk. Also, she added, almost as an afterthought, I thought you might want to meet your son. A gasp escaped from somewhere in the room. Someone dropped a pen. Elliot's fingers curled into a fist. You don't get to just walk in here and say that. Clara raised an eyebrow. You're right. I shouldn't have to say it at all. Their eyes locked again, and for a second there was no one else in the room. Just the two of them, facing all the years that never got closure. You recognized me the second I walked in, she said quietly. But you chose to erase me as if I'd never existed. Elliot's throat moved. But no sound came. He glanced over at Noah, now humming softly, legs swinging from the couch, sketching a superhero with a cape made of fire. His heart twisted. Clara, he murmured, voice barely audible. But Clara cut him off. I didn't come here for apologies or explanations. I came here to remind you that silence doesn't undo what you did. She turned to leave. But just as she reached Noah, Elliot finally stepped forward. Wait. Clara froze. Noah looked up from his drawing. Elliot's voice cracked slightly. He's mine. She turned slowly. Her eyes shimmered, but her chin stayed firm. Yes, yours. Elliot stepped closer, tentative, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to breathe the same air. How old is he? He'll be 5 next week. He exhaled, and something in him seemed to collapse. That night, he whispered, after you told me, I thought I was doing the right thing. Clara's smile was tight. You thought wrong. I didn't want you to live in my shadow, hiding, always watching your back for office gossip or scandals. You didn't want your name attached to a mistake. His face hardened. That's not fair. And what you did was? There it was, raw, exposed, no masks between them. Elliot turned to Noah again. The boy smiled up at him, curious, no idea about the hurricane that had cracked open just by his presence. Has he ever asked about me? Elliot asked. Clara nodded. He calls you the hero man. He dreams about you. Elliot blinked rapidly, like something stung behind his eyes. He draws you, Clara continued, her voice softer now, but he's never seen your face. So in every drawing, your face is just blank. Something broke inside him. All the coldness, the walls he'd built, the pride that had kept him silent for 5 years. It all buckled. He crouched down slowly, so he was eye level with the boy. Hi, he said gently. I'm Elliot. Noah tilted his head. Are you the hero? Elliot's eyes filled. I don't know. I want to be. Noah blinked, thoughtful. You look like me. Elliot chuckled. Just barely. I guess I do. Behind them, people started quietly returning to work, unsure what to do with the scene unfolding in front of them. But no one really focused. Everyone was still listening, still watching. Elliot stood again, turning to Clara. Can we talk? She shook her head. Not here. I'll cancel my meetings. You should have canceled your silence 5 years ago. Ouch. But he didn't flinch. Not this time. He looked down at Noah again. Would it be all right if I took both of you to lunch, just to talk? Noah's eyes sparkled. Can we get fries? Clara hesitated. It depends. Elliot looked up. On what? On whether you're going to show up this time or disappear again when it gets hard. Silence hung between them like a verdict waiting to fall. Then she added almost gently, He doesn't need a hero, Elliot. He needs a father. And with that, she took Noah's hand and turned toward the elevator. Elliot didn't stop them. He just stood there, surrounded by 1,000 questions and the ghost of every choice he never had the courage to face until now. But as the elevator doors began to close, Noah reached his hand out and waved, Bye, Mr. Elliot. Then the doors shut, and Elliot was left alone in the middle of the room, drowning in the truth he had tried so hard to bury. Elliot stared at the closed elevator doors long after Clara and Noah were gone. The building buzzed quietly around him, footsteps, printers, soft conversation, but none of it registered. His world had narrowed to the last 10 minutes. The child's face, the drawings, Clara's voice. He doesn't need a hero, he needs a father. His hand moved instinctively to his watch, his father's watch. The leather was warm against his wrist. That watch had always reminded him to stay focused, stay sharp, stay in control. But now it just felt heavy. An hour later, Elliot stood in his office, blinds drawn, lights dimmed. The view of the skyline stretched far beyond the glass, but he wasn't looking at it. He was holding something else, a small drawing, crumpled slightly at the corner, left behind on the couch. Noah had forgotten it. A superhero stood in the center, big shoulders, fire cape, blank face, one hand reaching down toward a little boy who looked just like Noah. Above it, written in blocky letters, the hero who doesn't know he's a dad yet. Elliot sat down hard on the edge of the couch. For the first time in years, he felt completely unprepared, like a fraud in his own life. The door opened behind him. "Sir?" It was Elise, his longtime executive assistant. "The investors are waiting." "Cancel the meeting," Elliot said quietly. She blinked. "Sir, we've rescheduled 3 times." I said, "Cancel it." She hesitated. "Is everything all right?" Elliot looked up at her slowly. "Elise," he said, voice rasping. "Did you know?" She frowned. "Know what?" He handed her the drawing. She studied it in silence, then looked back at him. "Is this Clara's son?" He nodded. A pause. Then Elise sat down across from him, her voice gentle but firm. "People don't just walk back into your life after 5 years without a reason." "She didn't walk in," Elliot muttered. "She applied under a different name." Elise raised an eyebrow. "Would you have hired her if she used her real one?" He didn't answer. "Exactly." That evening, Clara opened her apartment door and nearly tripped over a small box sitting on the welcome mat. No note, just the box. Inside, the same folder she'd returned earlier, and a sealed white envelope with her name on it. Real name, Clara Evans. She opened it cautiously. Inside, a check. A large one, but more importantly, a handwritten note. "I never forgot. I just didn't think I deserved to remember. If you're willing, I'd like to talk. No suits, no offices, just Elliot." Noah peeked around the corner. "Mama? What's that?" Clara folded the letter quickly. "Just papers." She set the check aside without a second glance. Money wasn't what she wanted, and it wasn't what Noah needed either. She looked down at the pendant around her neck, fingering it softly. After a long moment, she picked up her phone, typed, then deleted, then typed again. Sent, tomorrow, 11 a.m., Central Park, near the fountain. The next day, the sun broke through the clouds as if it had been waiting for this moment. Elliot stood near the fountain in Central Park, dressed differently this time. No suit, no tie. Just a navy sweater, jeans, and an expression that looked like sleep hadn't visited him the night before. He looked human, vulnerable, and maybe for the first time in a decade, uncertain. Clara walked toward him with Noah in tow. The boy wore a little hoodie and carried his sketchbook under one arm. Elliot's eyes met hers. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't." "Fair." He crouched down and smiled softly at Noah. "Hey, buddy." Noah grinned. "Hi, Mr. Elliot. I drew you something else." He opened his sketchbook and flipped to a new page. This one had a face. It looked just like Elliot's, with one difference: a smile. Elliot blinked. "You gave me a face this time." "Yeah," Noah said proudly, "because you're real now." That hit deeper than it should have. He looked up at Clara. "Can I talk to you? Alone?" "Just a few minutes." Clara looked at Noah. "Go sit by the bench and draw the ducks, all right?" "I'll be right here." Noah ran off happily. Elliot exhaled, then turned to her. "I should have been there," he said. "From the beginning. I knew it the second I saw him. Clara said nothing. I didn't leave you because I didn't care. I left because I thought it was the only way not to ruin your life. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide what ruins someone's life, Elliot. That's not love. That's control. He looked down. I was scared, he admitted, of the responsibility, of what people would say, of turning into my father. Clara softened slightly. I didn't expect you to have all the answers. I just needed you to show up, he nodded slowly. I want to be there now, for him and for you, if you'll let me. Clara looked at him for a long time, then said the one thing he hadn't expected. He already has a last name. Elliot's face fell. Clara continued gently. He doesn't need to be a Hayes to be yours. She took a breath. But if you want to be in his life, you're going to have to earn it. Not with gifts, not with money, with time, with truth. He nodded. I will. Clara turned to walk back toward Noah, but before she did, she looked over her shoulder. One more thing. Elliot looked up. If you ever disappear again, you don't just lose us, you lose yourself. And she walked away. Elliot sat on the bench beside Noah a few minutes later, unsure of what to say. But Noah spoke first. Are you going to stay now? Elliot looked at him, then nodded. I want to, if you'll let me. Noah thought for a second, then held up his drawing. Then you have to earn your cape. Elliot chuckled. Eyes wet. I'll try, kiddo. I really will. 2 weeks had passed since the meeting at the fountain. Elliot hadn't missed a single day, not one. He'd shown up early every morning, sometimes just to drop off a coffee for Clara before her freelance gigs, other times to take Noah to the park. Once, he even sat through a 3-hour puppet show at the local library without checking his phone once. And that's when Clara started to believe he might be serious. But believing didn't mean forgetting, and forgiveness wasn't automatic. Elliot was learning that the hard way. It was a Saturday morning when he showed up at their apartment door holding a backpack and a bright yellow kite. Thought we could try the park again, he said. Shifting awkwardly, Noah peeked from behind Clara's legs. Can we go, Mama? Clara hesitated, then nodded. 2 hours. Elliot smiled, relieved. You got it. She knelt down beside Noah. No candy, no soda. Stay where he can see you. And if anything feels off, you call me right away. I know, Noah whispered. You always say that. Clara gave him a kiss on the forehead, then looked up at Elliot, one eyebrow raised. I meant it. He nodded. Understood. In the park, the sky stretched open and blue. Elliot ran across the grass with Noah, kite string in hand, laughing like someone half his age. It took a few tries and one near collision with a jogger, but eventually the kite soared. Noah cheered. Elliot grinned wide. We did it? Noah looked up at the flying kite, then back at him. Are you coming to my birthday? Elliot blinked. When is it? Next week. I'm turning 5. Elliot's chest tightened. He'd missed 4 of them. I'd love to, Noah smiled. Mama said I could invite people now that it's just in the backyard. Elliot looked at him. Can I bring a present? The boy nodded. But don't make it noisy. Mama doesn't like toys that beep. Elliot laughed. Got it. No beeping. For a few moments it all felt natural, easy, but the moment didn't last, because just across the path under a shaded tree, Clara watched them from a distance. She hadn't gone inside like she said she would. She stood there, arms folded, unreadable expression on her face, watching. That evening, Elliot walked her and Noah back to their door. Noah skipped ahead, pretending his stick was a sword. Elliot turned to Clara. I was thinking, maybe next weekend, just the 2 of us could talk, really talk. Clara narrowed her eyes. About what? About what we want this to look like. Clara looked past him, toward the hallway where Noah had disappeared. You don't get to drop in and define things now, Elliot. This isn't a contract, it's a life. I know that. Do you? She asked quietly. Because you're good with the fun parts. Park days, ice cream, kites. She stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "But he's going to get sick. He's going to have nightmares. He's going to yell and test boundaries and cry when you leave. Are you ready for that version of fatherhood?" Elliot didn't speak right away. "I don't want to miss any part of him. Not anymore." Clara folded her arms. "Then stop treating this like something you can fix with a few sweet gestures and good intentions." Her words weren't cruel, they were real, and they hit harder than any boardroom criticism ever had. Later that night, Elliot sat alone on his apartment balcony, staring at a photo he'd taken on his phone earlier that day, Noah laughing, mouth wide open, kite behind him like a comet. He'd never seen joy like that, and he was terrified he'd lose it again. Clara, meanwhile, stood in Noah's room, pulling the blankets up to his chin. He stirred. "Mama? Is Mr. Elliot going away again?" Clara froze. Her throat tightened. "I don't know, sweetheart." "Are you mad at him?" She sat beside him on the bed. "Not mad, just careful. Because he forgot us." Clara looked down at her son. "No, because sometimes people leave even when they don't want to." Noah thought about that. Then asked softly, "If I draw him again, can I give him a heart this time?" Clara didn't answer. She just kissed his forehead and whispered, "Good night." Monday morning. Elliot waited outside Noah's preschool, leaning against his car, watching kids rush inside. He held a small paper bag. Inside, a simple lunch he'd made himself. Peanut butter and jelly, cut into stars. When Clara walked up holding Noah's hand, she paused. "What's that?" "Lunch," Elliot said. "I asked what he liked. Thought I could help today." Clara raised an eyebrow. "You cooked?" He looked a little embarrassed. "It's mostly spreading things on bread, but—" "Yeah." Noah beamed. "Star sandwiches." Clara hesitated, then took the bag from him. "Okay," she said, voice softening. That was thoughtful. Elliot looked relieved. "I'm trying, Clara. I see that." They stood in silence for a moment. Then she added, "Keep trying." As Noah disappeared into the classroom, Elliot turned to leave. But Clara called out, "Wait!" He turned back. She reached into her coat pocket and handed him something, a folded sheet of paper. He opened it. It was one of Noah's older drawings. This one was different. The man had a face, a heart on his chest, and this time 2 hands reaching out, one to the boy, the other to a woman with brown hair and soft freckles. Beneath it, scrawled in crayon, "Us." Elliot looked up. Clara didn't say anything. She just nodded once, turned, and walked away. Clara stood in her kitchen, stirring soup, the soft scent of rosemary and garlic filling the small apartment. She wasn't really hungry. Cooking was just something to do with her hands, something to focus on besides the chaos of feelings swirling inside her chest. Because things were changing. And change, no matter how hopeful, still hurt. Noah had started calling Elliot my friend to his classmates, not my dad, not yet, but my friend. And the way he said it, proud, eager, trusting, it scared her more than she wanted to admit. What if Elliot failed again? What if this version of him was temporary? Elliot, meanwhile, was in a bookstore across town, crouched in the children's section, scanning shelves. The sales clerk tilted her head. "Looking for anything specific?" "A birthday present," he said. "My son's turning 5. She smiled. "What does he like?" Elliot's lips tugged upward slightly. Superheroes, dinosaurs, anything that flies. 10 minutes later, he left with 3 books, a plush velociraptor, and a hand-crafted pop-up card shaped like a cape. He hadn't felt this nervous about a gift since he was 16, buying a bracelet for his first crush. This time, it wasn't about impressing someone, it was about showing up. Noah's birthday arrived on a Sunday. Clara kept it simple. Streamers, a homemade cake, a tiny plastic pool in the backyard, just 3 neighborhood kids. One close friend of hers, and Elliot, who arrived early holding 2 paper bags and wearing the most unsure smile she'd ever seen on him. "I brought juice boxes," he said. Clara raised a brow. "You don't strike me as a juice box expert." "First time for everything." He stepped inside, looking around. The apartment was modest, cozy, lived in. It smelled like cinnamon and childhood. He noticed drawings taped to the fridge and his own face, well, a cartoon version of it, on more than one. "You let him keep those up?" he asked quietly. Clara shrugged. "I tried to take one down once," he cried. Elliot swallowed. A few minutes later, Noah barreled out of his room in a superhero cape and socks that didn't match. "Mr. Elliot!" he shouted. Elliot knelt. "Happy birthday, buddy." He handed him the dinosaur plush. Noah's eyes lit up. "He's perfect." He hugged it to his chest like it was made of gold. Clara watched from the hallway. Arms folded, heart caught somewhere between guarded and warmed. The party went well, chaotic, loud, messy in all the right ways. There were frosting smears on the windows and balloons tied to chairs. Clara's friend Jenny pulled her aside at one point, whispering, "He's really trying." "I know," Clara replied. "Do you believe him?" Clara didn't answer right away. "I'm not sure what I believe yet." After everyone left and Noah crashed into a post-sugar nap, Elliot stayed to help clean. They worked in quiet rhythm, him folding streamers, her washing dishes. At one point their hands brushed as they both reached for a plate. Neither pulled away. "You could have left," Clara said suddenly. "After the cake, no one expected you to stay this long." "I know. Why didn't you?" He dried the plate slowly. "Because I wanted to be here for all of it, not just the photo op." She leaned against the sink, arms crossed. "I still don't know how to trust you. I still don't know how to deserve it." Their eyes met. It was the closest they'd come to real honesty in years. Later that evening, they sat on the couch, a little distance between them, Noah asleep in the next room. Elliot stared at the photo frames on the wall. Most were of Clara and Noah, a few of Clara alone. "You're a good mom," he said softly. She looked over at him. "I had no choice." "That's not true. You had every reason to fall apart." "You didn't," she sighed. "You know, there were nights he cried so hard I didn't know if I could handle another morning. I was 24, alone, freelancing and folding laundry in the same hour. But every time I wanted to break, he smiled at me, and I remembered why I couldn't." Elliot's jaw tensed. "I wasn't there. I should have been." "You can't undo the nights I walked the hallway alone with him screaming, or the times he had a fever, and I stayed up with a damp cloth praying it wouldn't get worse." "I know." Clara turned to him. "Clara," voice low, "and now you want to just come back?" He looked down at his hands. "No, I want to build back." A beat passed. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She nodded, cautious. "Why did you keep the necklace?" She reached up and touched the pendant, now resting outside her blouse. It shimmered in the dim light. "Because it reminded me of who you were before I became a coward. Before you stopped looking at me like I mattered." Silence settled between them. Then Elliot spoke again, quiet, almost broken. "I never stopped looking, Clara. I just got really good at pretending." She didn't speak. Didn't reach for him. But she didn't turn away either, and maybe that meant something. The next morning, Elliot sat outside the school gates waiting for Noah to come out. He was humming softly, half lost in thought, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Hayes?" "Yes." "This is Marissa Franklin." "I'm Clara's former landlord." He sat up straighter. "Is something wrong?" "She listed you as an emergency contact recently. I thought you should know she came by this morning to request a reference letter." Elliot frowned. "Reference? For what?" "She's applying for a relocation program at subsidized housing outside the city. She mentioned wanting more space for her son." Elliot's heart dropped. "Wait, she's leaving?" The woman hesitated. She didn't say anything directly, but it sounded like a fresh start. "She asked me not to mention it, but I felt like someone should know." Elliot sat in stunned silence. a fresh start. Without him, without them. Across town, Clara stood at her kitchen table, paperwork spread out, her pen hovering. She hadn't told Noah yet. She hadn't even told herself if it was final. But something in her still feared the risk of opening that door fully again, just to watch it slam. And that fear? It whispered louder than anything else. Elliot drove through the city with white knuckles gripping the steering wheel. He didn't remember half the red lights or the horns blaring behind him. Clara was leaving the city, leaving him. Again. But this time she wouldn't just be walking out of his life. She'd be taking his son. And the truth was, he couldn't even blame her. Not really. He hadn't given her a reason to stay yet, just promises and guilt and a few well-meaning weekends. Maybe it wasn't enough, but if he was going to lose her, it wouldn't be in silence. Clara opened the door just as he was about to knock. Her eyes widened, startled. "Elliot?" "Is it true?" he asked, breath short. She hesitated, already knowing what he'd heard. "I haven't signed anything," she said quietly. "Not yet." "You're leaving." "I'm considering it." He stepped inside before she could say no. "Noah's here?" "He's watching a movie." "Good," he said. "Because I don't want him hearing this." Clara crossed her arms. "There's nothing to yell about." "I'm not yelling." "You sound like you're about to." He turned to her, eyes burning. "You were going to take him and just go. No warning, no conversation. Just a quiet exit, like I was never part of any of this." Clara didn't flinch. "I was trying to protect him." "From what?" he asked. "From me?" She didn't answer. "That's not fair, Clara. I've shown up. Every time. I've been here. I've tried." She shook her head. "You've tried for 3 weeks. I've tried for 5 years. You don't get to measure effort in weekends and library visits. Try doing it for 1-800 days with no backup." His chest rose and fell heavily. "I was the backup. You just didn't let me be." Clara's voice cracked. "You left, Elliot. I had no reason to believe you'd stay if I let you back in." He took a step closer. "You think this is easy for me? Waking up every day knowing I missed his first words? His first steps? Every birthday? Every scraped knee and school drawing and bedtime story?" He pressed a hand to his chest. "It kills me. Every single day." Clara's eyes welled with tears. "Then why are you only fighting for it now?" "Because now I see what I almost lost." They stared at each other, two people who had once shared so much, now unsure if they could share anything again. A small voice interrupted. "Why are you sad?" They turned. Noah stood in the hallway, his plush dinosaur tucked under one arm, his eyes wide and worried. Elliot dropped to one knee instantly. "We're not sad, buddy," he said gently. "Just talking like grown-ups do sometimes." Noah didn't look convinced. "Are you leaving again?" Elliot's voice shook. "Not if I can help it." Noah walked forward and took Elliot's hand in his tiny fingers. "Then stay." It wasn't a question. It was a command, spoken in the pure, honest way only a child could. Clara turned away quickly, brushing at her eyes. Elliot held onto Noah's hand like it was a lifeline. Then, in the softest voice, "You want me to stay?" Noah nodded. "Even when I mess up?" Noah shrugged. "Mama says everyone messes up, but the good ones try again." Clara let out a shaky laugh. Leave it to her son to break the ice neither adult could touch. That night, after Noah fell asleep clutching his new superhero book, Clara sat across from Elliot at the kitchen table, 2 mugs of tea between them, no yelling now, just truth. "I wasn't going to leave without saying goodbye," she said, "but I was going to leave." "Why?" "Because I didn't want to give him false hope, or give myself false hope." He looked down. "You still don't trust me." "I want to," she whispered. "God, I want to. But I don't know how to let you in without reopening everything I buried." He reached across the table, not grabbing, not pushing, just resting his hand near hers. "I'm not here to erase the pain," he said. "I'm here to earn the right to be part of what comes next." She looked at him. Really looked. This wasn't the boy she'd fallen for in late-night office coffee breaks and stolen glances by the printer. This was a man, still imperfect, still figuring things out, but showing up. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Later that week, Elliot took Noah out for lunch, just the two of them. They sat at a window booth, plates full of fries and chicken nuggets. Noah was drawing again, another superhero scene, but this time, the hero man wasn't flying. He was holding hands with the little boy. "You draw a lot?" Elliot said. Noah nodded. "Mama says it helps me tell the truth." Elliot smiled. "That's a pretty smart thing to say." "She says I draw better than I talk sometimes." Elliot looked down at the sketch. "What's this one about?" Noah thought for a moment. "It's about not being alone anymore." And just like that, Elliot felt something shift inside him. A small piece of redemption, a thread reconnecting. That evening, Elliot stood in his apartment staring at the last drawer of his nightstand, the one he never opened. Inside was a box. Inside the box, the old photograph. The ultrasound Clara had sent him once, months after their goodbye. He had kept it, even though he never answered her message, and tucked behind it the letter he wrote but never sent. He picked up a pen, flipped the page, and began writing something new. This time, he wouldn't send it. He would say it. Elliot knocked on Clara's door at exactly 7 p.m. Noah opened it before she could even get there. "Mr. Elliot," he beamed, "you're early." "I like to be early for the important things." Noah held up a backpack. "Mama said you're coming to my school thing tonight." Elliot smiled. "The family night showcase? I wouldn't miss it." Behind them, Clara appeared in the hallway. She wore a simple navy sweater and jeans, her hair pinned up casually. She looked tired, but beautiful. Elliot straightened his jacket. "I brought these," he said, holding up a bouquet of wildflowers. "For your kitchen, or, wherever you want to put them." She hesitated, then took them. "They're nice." "They reminded me of you," he said. "Not loud, but they stay in your memory." A pause. She blinked. "That was surprisingly poetic." "I'm full of surprises these days." They walked to the school together. Noah skipping ahead, proudly leading the way, like it was his parade. Inside the cafeteria, rows of tiny chairs filled the room. Hand-painted signs decorated the walls. "Our heroes at home." Elliot noticed that every kid had drawn a picture of their hero. Some were moms, some were grandparents. One kid had drawn his dog wearing a cape. Noah's drawing, posted on the wall near the back, stood out. It showed 3 people, a boy, a woman, and a tall man with gray-blue eyes. All 3 had hearts drawn on their chests. The caption, scrawled beneath in uneven handwriting, "My heroes, my mama, and the man who came back." Elliot stared at it. Frozen. Clara stepped beside him. "I didn't know he wrote that," she said softly. "I didn't know I'd earned that." "He believes in you." Elliot looked at her. "Do you?" She hesitated. "I'm starting to." The night continued with songs, poems, messy macaroni art, and one class-wide rendition of "You're My Sunshine" that left more than a few parents sniffling behind their phones. Elliot clapped for every kid. But when Noah stood on the small stage and recited a poem, his hands shaking, his voice barely above a whisper, Elliot leaned forward in his seat, hands clasped tight, eyes never leaving the boy. When it ended, he stood up and cheered. Clara turned to look at him, and she saw something in Elliot's face she hadn't seen in 5 years. Pride without fear. Afterward, in the parking lot, Noah fell asleep in the backseat of Clara's car. Elliot walked her to the driver's side, quiet. Clara glanced at him. "You looked more nervous than he did." "I was," Elliot admitted. Clara smiled faintly. "You were good with him tonight?" Elliot shifted. "I want to be there for all the nights, not just the ones with spotlights and applause." She looked down. "I'm not asking you to be perfect," she said, but I do need you to be consistent. I need to know you'll still show up when he throws a tantrum, or when I'm too tired to explain what he needs. I will. I know you want to, she said. But wanting isn't the same as doing it. He stepped closer. Then tell me how. I'm listening. Clara hesitated. Then she did something he didn't expect. She reached into her purse and pulled out a key to her apartment. Not a gesture of romance, a gesture of trust. You can use it when you pick him up, she said. I won't always be there. I'm learning to let go of control. He took it gently, reverently. Thank you, he said. But Elliot, she added, looking into his eyes, this key opens a door. That doesn't mean it opens my heart. Not yet. He nodded. I'm not rushing this. They stood in silence for a moment longer. Then she got in the car and drove away, leaving him standing under a flickering street lamp, key in hand, chest full of something new. Hope. 3 days later, it was Elliot's turn to pick Noah up from school. He showed up early again and waited at the gates. Noah ran into his arms, crayon smudges on his cheeks, and a folded paper crown falling off his head. Mr. Elliot, I got special star today. You did? Elliot beamed. What for? For sharing my crayons and helping someone tie their shoes. Sounds like a hero move to me. Noah grinned and reached into his backpack. I made this. He handed Elliot a new drawing. This one showed a house, 3 people on the porch. A sun in the sky, a dog next to them, even though they didn't have one. And the title? My Family, Maybe. Elliot blinked hard. That's a good title. Noah looked up. Is it really? Maybe? Elliot crouched down to meet his eyes. I hope not, buddy. I hope one day soon it's just my family. That night, Clara got home late from a freelance shoot. She found Elliot sitting on the floor of her living room, building a puzzle with Noah. Her living room, her couch, her family. For the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like someone had invaded her space. It felt like maybe someone had come home. She didn't say anything, just watched them, smiling, and then quietly whispered to herself like a thought too shy to be said out loud. Maybe. But across town, in the sleek cold glass of Elliot's office building, his phone buzzed. A message from someone he hadn't seen in years. We need to talk. It's about Clara, and it can't wait. Elliot stared at the message glowing on his phone screen. We need to talk. It's about Clara, and it can't wait. The sender, Renee Talbot, an old name, a familiar ghost, his former colleague, the one person who knew about Clara back then, maybe more than she should have. She had seen the signs 5 years ago, the glances, the late hours, the goodbye. He hadn't heard from her since she transferred to the company's European branch, until now. He sat alone in his office, twilight casting shadows on the marble floor. Something in his chest stirred, not panic, but something close. They met the next morning in a quiet cafe tucked between old brownstones in the Upper West Side. Renee arrived first, sleek suit, no smile, a phone in hand like always. Elliot approached, tension in his shoulders. You look the same, she said flatly. He sat down. You don't. Europ'll do that. Why did you text me? She looked at him for a long beat, then slid a folder across the table. Elliot didn't move. What's this? Something you should have known 5 years ago. He slowly opened it. Inside, a scanned email, some printed messages, a copy of a personnel report, but one line jumped out at him. Clara Evans, internship reassignment request, denied. His brows knit together. What is this? Renee leaned in. She tried to stay after you walked away. She applied for 3 new positions, all within the company. Elliot blinked. I didn't know that. Of course you didn't. The HR director at the time, Michael Deeks, flagged the applications and shut them down. Said it was conflict of interest. But there was no conflict. I stepped away. Renee nodded. Didn't matter. He assumed the worst. And back then, you weren't exactly fighting to defend her name, were you? Elliot's jaw clenched. Renee continued. She was forced out quietly. No explanation. No chance to build her career. He looked down at the papers again. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I left the company. I can talk freely. And because," she hesitated, "you've always been better at fixing things too late." He looked up, eyes sharp. "She didn't just lose you, Elliot. She lost her future." Silence. He folded the papers slowly, heart thudding. "Does she know?" Renee shook her head. "She still thinks HR ignored her. She never knew it was internal politics." Elliot leaned back, his entire frame tense. Renee stood to leave. "One more thing," she said. "If you really want her to forgive you, don't just show up for the child. Show up for the woman you broke." And she was gone. That evening, Clara found a note on her door, folded, handwritten. "You fought alone for far too long. I want to carry what I left you holding." Inside the envelope, the HR reports, and a message from Elliot. "You didn't fail. They failed you. And so did I. Let me make it right." She sat on the couch, frozen, the papers in her lap. 5 years. 5 years she thought she was just another intern they discarded. Another face the system didn't bother to see. And all this time, someone chose to block her. Not fate, not policy, someone. She closed her eyes and exhaled something like grief, but also relief. That weekend, Elliot asked Clara to meet him in the old office building lobby, the same one where they first met, where she had once been fired, publicly, cruelly. It was Saturday. The lobby was quiet, the lights low. When Clara arrived, she saw him standing in front of the same glass doors he once watched her leave through. But this time, he looked her in the eye. "I brought you here because this is where I failed you most." She didn't speak. He continued, "I erased you in front of everyone. I told myself it was to protect what I'd built. But all I did was protect my pride." He pulled something from his pocket. A simple USB drive. "These are the internal recordings from the HR meetings. I had the legal team dig them up. You were shut out, Clara, not for your work, for your silence." She took the drive slowly. "I'm not showing you this to reopen wounds," he said. "I just wanted you to know it was never your fault." She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I spent years thinking I wasn't good enough, that I'd somehow messed everything up." "You didn't," he said. "I did." They stood in silence. Then she stepped forward. "I don't know if this fixes anything." "It doesn't," he said, "but maybe it starts to." She looked around the lobby. Same tile floor, same fluorescent lights, but it didn't feel the same anymore because this time she was in control. Later that evening, as Elliot tucked Noah into bed, the boy whispered sleepily, "Are you going to marry Mama?" Elliot blinked. "What? She likes flowers and soup and when people don't leave." Elliot laughed softly. "That's a lot to remember." Noah yawned. "You should ask her." "When you're brave." Elliot kissed his forehead. "I'll try to be." But across the city, Clara stared at the USB drive sitting next to her laptop, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel small, she felt seen, and that, she realized, was what she'd needed all along. Not perfection, just truth. It had been 4 months since Elliot re-entered their lives, and somehow everything had changed without anything being officially said. He was there. Every Thursday he picked Noah up from school. Every Sunday morning he showed up with coffee and let Clara sleep in while he cooked pancakes and made a mess in her kitchen. Every moment he stayed. And yet, neither of them dared to speak the words hovering between them. They laughed, shared glances, sometimes even sat too close on the couch after Noah was asleep. But they didn't call it anything, and maybe that's what scared Clara most, because it was starting to feel like home again. And homes, once lost, are hard to rebuild. One morning, Clara came out of her bedroom in her robe, rubbing her eyes. Elliot stood by the stove, apron on, humming softly as he flipped something in the pan. She paused in the doorway. The light hit him just right. Messy hair, stubble, sleeves rolled up. Focus on the skillet. He looked like he belonged there, and for a moment she let herself believe he did. He turned, catching her watching him. "What?" "Nothing," she said, smiling faintly. "You're just comfortable here." "I want to be." Her eyes searched his. "I know." That night Clara found a note on her pillow. No envelope, just her name, in Elliot's handwriting. She unfolded it slowly. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., rooftop of the old building. Bring that necklace, the one you never stopped wearing. E." The next evening the sky was turning gold when Clara stepped out onto the rooftop. She found fairy lights strung between two antennas, a blanket laid out, a small table with 2 takeout containers, and a thermos. Elliot stood there, no suit. Just a navy button-down, sleeves rolled, hair tousled by the wind. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "You came. You asked." He smiled. "I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't." "Why?" She shrugged. "Because I'm not sure I can take another goodbye." "There won't be one," he said. "Not this time." She looked around. "What is this?" "A chance," he said, "to stop pretending." He walked over, pulling something from his jacket, a photo, the old one, the only one they ever took together during her internship. At a company retreat. She was laughing, turned half away from the camera. He was looking at her. Completely unaware he was being caught mid-admiration, Clara stared at it. "I forgot this existed." "I didn't," he said. "I carried it in a drawer for years. Couldn't look at it, couldn't throw it away." He took a deep breath. "Clara, I know I can't go back and change what I did, but I don't want to go another day pretending I don't feel something real for you." She stayed quiet. "Say something," he whispered. She looked up, eyes glassy. "I don't know what we are." He stepped closer. "But I know what we could be," she laughed. Shaky. "That's the part that scares me." "Me too." He reached for her hand. "I love you, Clara." Her breath hitched. "I've loved you since before I even knew what it meant. And I've loved you through everything I ruined. I'm not asking for forgiveness tonight. I'm asking for your future, whatever part of it you're willing to give me." Tears filled her eyes. "You say that like it's easy." "I say it because it's true." Silence. Then, slowly, she reached for the pendant at her neck, unclasped it, held it in her palm. "I kept this," she said, "because even when I hated you, I still wanted to remember the version of you who gave it to me. And now?" "Now." She stepped forward. Voice trembling. "I want to find out who you are when you're not afraid anymore." Elliot gently closed her fingers over the necklace. "I'm still learning." She smiled softly. "So am I." Later, as they sat on the rooftop eating cold takeout and sipping tea from the thermos, Clara rested her head lightly on his shoulder. Not out of romance, out of quiet understanding. Elliot kissed her hair. Neither spoke, because some moments don't need words. But down below, in the stillness of the night, Clara's phone buzzed inside her bag. One new voicemail, unknown number. She played it later, alone in her apartment after Noah was asleep. "Hi, Miss Evans. This is Laura from Rosewood Legal. I apologize for the late call, but we've been assigned to a custody review based on a recent anonymous report concerning the biological father of your son. We'd like to schedule a time to speak." Clara's heart stopped. The message kept playing. "Please note, this is a preliminary investigation. No official action is being taken at this time." Her hands trembled. Who would report them? Who even knew enough to question Elliot's right to be in Noah's life? And more importantly, why now? Up on the rooftop, Elliot had never felt more at peace. Downstairs, Clara was staring at her phone. The past was trying to tear through the door they had just opened. Clara barely slept that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the voicemail echoing in her head. Custody review, anonymous report, preliminary investigation. 3 phrases. Each one felt like a countdown. She didn't tell Elliot, not yet, because she needed time to think, to prepare, to protect. Her first instinct was what it had always been: run. But this time, she had someone else to think about. Two someone else's. The next morning, Elliot rang the doorbell with 2 coffees and a paper bag of Noah's favorite cinnamon muffins. Clara opened the door, smiling, but just barely. "Rough night?" he asked. "You could say that." He handed her the coffee. "You okay?" "I will be," she said, but her hands trembled slightly as she took the cup. He didn't push, but he noticed. That afternoon, she sat across from a young lawyer in a small conference room. Clean walls, plastic chairs, a clock ticking too loud. "Ms. Evans, thank you for coming in voluntarily," the woman said. "This will move faster if we're transparent on both sides." Clara gave a cautious nod. The lawyer adjusted her glasses. An anonymous report was filed suggesting that Mr. Elliot Hayes, recently identified as Noah's biological father, has not pursued legal guardianship, nor is listed on the birth certificate. Given his sudden re-entry into Noah's life, the court is obligated to ensure the child's well-being. Clara swallowed hard. He's never posed a threat. He's never tried to take Noah. The lawyer nodded gently. "We're not accusing anyone, but high-profile cases often attract scrutiny. And given Mr. Hayes's position, the system may treat this differently than most." Differently how? Depending on how things develop, he could be advised to petition for partial custody or full. Clara's voice turned sharp. "He wouldn't do that." "You're sure?" "Yes." The lawyer studied her. "Has he said that directly?" Clara opened her mouth and realized she didn't know. Elliot got the call that night. He was putting Noah's drawings into a new folder when his phone rang. Unknown number. He picked up, distracted. "Hayes." "Mr. Hayes, this is Laura Tran, family law representative for the State Custody Board. We've contacted Ms. Evans already, but wanted to inform you directly that you may be contacted to provide statements regarding your involvement in your son's life." Elliot stood up slowly. "Wait, what?" "This is not a formal case," she clarified, "merely an internal review. We understand your involvement is recent, and we are hoping to clarify expectations on both sides." Elliot's voice lowered. "Someone thinks I'm a threat to my own son?" "We don't assume guilt, Mr. Hayes, but your lack of legal guardianship does raise red flags when paired with a public history of separation." Elliot's mouth went dry. He hung up, heart pounding, then immediately called Clara. She answered on the 3rd ring. "I just got the call," he said. "No greeting." "I know." "You knew? Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to," she said, voice low. "I just needed to understand what it meant first." "Clara," he said, his tone tight, "I would never take him from you. I know that. Then why does it sound like you don't?" Silence then. "Because this system doesn't care what you'd never do. It cares what you can. And you're Elliot Hayes, the CEO, with all the power and connections to turn this into something ugly, even if you don't mean to." He sat down hard. "And you think that makes me a danger?" "I think," she said, voice shaking, "that the law doesn't see love. It sees names and paperwork, and who looks more stable." She started to cry quietly. "I can't lose him, Elliot. I can't go through the courts. I can't sit in front of a judge and beg them to let me keep the only person I've never let down." Elliot was silent on the line. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because for the first time, he realized he had more power than her, and that terrified him. The next morning, Elliot walked into the boardroom at his company and requested a leave of absence. The directors blinked in confusion. "You want how long?" one asked. "As long as it takes," Elliot said. "For what?" Elliot stared at them. "To be a father." He showed up at Clara's apartment 2 hours later. Noah was at school. She answered in pajamas, clearly exhausted. "I'm sorry," he said without preamble, "for last night. Forever putting you in a position where you feel like I'm your enemy." Her eyes filled. "I'm scared, Elliot. I know." And part of me hates you for showing up and making everything better and worse at the same time. I deserve that." He stepped forward. "I'm not going to court. I'm not filing anything. I don't want rights written on paper. I want trust built in hours, days, years." He handed her a manila envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "My signed statement. Given voluntarily. I wrote everything down. I told them the truth. That you raised him alone. That you protected him. That I don't want custody. I just want a seat at the table." She opened it slowly, read a few lines, then looked up, tears falling. "This could ruin your image." He shrugged. "I'm not protecting an image anymore. I'm protecting my son." Then, after a pause, "And you." Clara stood there, holding the paper, hand to her chest. "You're different now." "I'm trying to be." She stepped forward and rested her head against his chest. He held her, gently, like she was made of glass. "I don't need a hero," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but I want to be one anyway." That evening, they told Noah about everything. They didn't use legal words. They just explained that sometimes people get confused about what makes a family, and sometimes they try to step in when they don't need to. But they promised him one thing. "No matter what anyone says, we're not going anywhere." Noah asked if he could draw a picture of that. They said yes. Across the city, a family law board reviewed Elliot's statement. One of them raised an eyebrow. "Self-incrimination, no attempt to claim rights, admits full fault. It's rare." Another replied, "It's honest. That says something." They filed it under no action required and closed the report. It rained the morning of Noah's art showcase. Not a storm, just that slow, calming kind of rain that washes the world without interrupting it. Clara stood at the window, her hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching the water bead against the glass. Behind her, Elliot helped Noah into his little dress shirt and mismatched socks, talking softly, telling him how proud he was. It had been 2 weeks since the custody scare was dismissed, but in Clara's heart, the fear hadn't completely left. She still checked her phone too often, still slept lightly, still didn't trust peace when it showed up at her door, but she was learning. And Elliot, he was making it easier. Not through grand gestures, but through small, steady ones, like learning how Noah liked his peanut butter spread, or waking up early to fix the leaky kitchen pipe, or folding laundry on Saturday mornings without being asked. He wasn't just visiting anymore, he was living with them, for them. At the school auditorium, Noah stood in front of his class, beaming. The walls behind him were lined with drawings. Superheroes, animals, family portraits. One drawing caught Clara's eye, and Elliot's too. It was titled simply, "My Real Life." 3 stick figures stood under a big wobbly sun. One had curly hair and freckles. One had spiky brown hair and a tie. And one, small, smiling, stood between them holding both hands. They had hearts on their shirts, and a sign above the drawing read, "My family, not maybe anymore, just real." After the show, Elliot pulled Clara aside in the hallway. He was nervous, more than usual. His hand gripped something in his pocket. The rain had stopped, but the smell of it still lingered on his coat. She looked up at him. "What's that face?" she asked. He took a breath, then pulled out a small velvet box. Clara froze, but when he opened it, it wasn't a ring. It was the necklace. The original one he'd given her 5 years ago, the one she thought had been lost forever. "I had it cleaned," he said. "Fixed the clasp. I kept it all these years, even after I thought I'd never see you again." Her eyes filled instantly. "I don't expect promises," he said gently. "Not today, not even tomorrow. But I wanted you to have this back, not as a symbol of who we were, but of what we survived." She stepped forward. Silent. "I love you," he whispered. "I'll love you in your fear, in your healing, in your fire, in your quiet." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I still don't know how to do this," she whispered. Then let's not do the, he said, smiling softly. Let's build it, together, however long it takes. She nodded. Then reached up slowly and pulled the pendant she'd been wearing off her neck, the one she'd hidden under her shirt all those years, and handed it to him. Keep this one, she said, to remember who I was. Then she took the old necklace with the cleaned one and put it on again, her hands trembling. And I'll wear this one to remember who I am now. Weeks passed, slow, gentle, healing weeks. One Sunday afternoon, Elliot, Clara, and Noah sat on a picnic blanket in the park. Noah ran ahead with his superhero cape flapping in the wind. Clara rested her head on Elliot's chest, her fingers gently brushing the side of his hand. He looked down at her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She smiled. "That I wasted so much time being afraid we'd never get here." He kissed the top of her head. "We're here now." Noah ran back, out of breath. "Did you see that jump?" "You flew," Elliot said, grabbing him in a hug. Clara joined them, laughing, pulling them both into her arms. It didn't look perfect from the outside, but it didn't have to, because it was real, built with scars, stitched with forgiveness, and held together by love that had been tested and chose to stay. As the sun set behind them, casting gold across the sky, Clara looked at Elliot and asked the question she'd been holding for days. "Do you think we'll make it?" He reached for her hand. "I think we already did. The end. Now tell me, what would you do if someone you once loved suddenly returned? But not alone. Would you run? Would you forgive? Or would you risk everything for one more chance? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hear your story. And hey, if this story touched you even a little bit, don't forget to leave a like. It helps us bring more real emotional stories like this to you. And if you're new here, subscribe for more powerful narratives every week. Because sometimes the right story finds you at the exact moment you need it. Thanks for watching.